Hi everybody, it's Geordie from Geordie's Cards and I am back with episode 17 of my Shop Your Crafty Stash series, and today I'm creating this fun slider pop-up card featuring some Mama Elephant and Heffy Doodle products. So the random number generator selected out the Me and My Dinosaur stamp set from Mama Elephant and the Heffy Doodle slider pop-up dies. And then I thought I would bring in the Mama Elephant Little Dino Agenda stamp set as well because they work so well with those big ones. So off screen, I went ahead and coloured and cut out my images here. And if you like my colouring, I'm afraid I can't take any of the credit for it. These were inspired by Mama Elephant. I went onto their YouTube channel because I remembered that when these stamp sets were released, they did a little colouring tutorial video on how they created these. They called them gumdrop dinosaurs, I think. So I went ahead and watched that video and kind of followed along and coloured in the same way. I will link the video down below if you are interested in checking that one out as well. I now have a piece of Bristol smooth cardstock which measures slightly larger than 5.5 by 4.25, and I'm using this Heffy Doodle masking tape to kind of mask off roughly halfway. It doesn't have to be exact, but around about halfway. And I'm going to do some Distress Oxide blending on my cardstock here. So I am pulling out, I've got Tattered Rose, Saltwater Taffy and Abandoned Coral are my first colours. And these are going to be my sky colours. So I wanted to create a kind of fiery, volcanic looking backdrop for my dinosaurs to live in. I thought that was kind of appropriate. So I'm using these colours to create a fiery looking sky. So I'm starting with that lightest colour towards the bottom part there. Then I'm going in with my Saltwater Taffy and blending over the top, and I will kind of go back and forth a couple of times until I get a nice smooth blend between my colours. I'm just using a blending brush and I'm tapping it off onto the side before I go onto the paper. I want to keep it fairly light. I don't want to get too heavy-handed with these colours. I just want to keep it fairly light, so I'm tapping that brush off in between before I go back onto my cardstock. And now I'm bringing in that Abandoned Coral colour just to add a bit of depth to the top of my card. And again, I'm going to go back and forth between my two brushes here. I'm not going to pick up any extra ink, just going to go back and forth until I get a nice blend. And once I'm happy with it, I'm going to do a bit of splattering, of course, because we love a bit of splattering. So I'm just covering the bottom part of my panel there to make sure I don't get any of these splatters on there. And I'm just using the darkest colour, that Abandoned Coral, spritzing it with a little bit of water, picking it up with a paintbrush and splattering that all over that top part of my panel to get some nice detail on there. Once that is done, I will go ahead and let this one dry. I actually hit it with my heat tool just to kind of speed up the process a little bit. And now I'm going to mask off the top part and I'm going to ink blend on the bottom. So just kind of going where that line is and using my masking tape to cover that up. And I'm going to use some scattered straw, some dried marigold, I think it was, and some spiced marmalade here for the ground. So it kind of went for orangey yellowy colours for the bottom and reddish pinkish colours for the top. I thought that would give a nice kind of volcanic looking landscape. Again, I'm going fairly light. I don't want to be too heavy-handed. So I'm just gently going over the top of that scattered straw with my dried marigold, going pretty much all the way to the bottom before I bring in that spiced marmalade, just to hit a little bit of darker colour towards the bottom there. And once again, going back and forth between my colours. So here's that brighter spiced marmalade colour. And again, I'm going in quite light to begin with. I do kind of add a little bit of extra here just to add some depth to it, but not going too heavy-handed, being a little bit careful not to get too much on there. I'm going to clean my brush off a little bit in between and then go back to that dried marigold and just smooth out that transition. Once again, I'm doing some splatter details. So again, with the darkest color, which is the spiced marmalade, and I'm just going to spritz that with some water and tap it all over with a paintbrush to get some nice splatter detail. Again, when this was all finished, I left it to dry for a little bit to make sure that my ink splatters didn't smear everywhere. And there we go, that's my finished panel. Now I'm pulling out my slider pop-up die, and I'm going to cut my slider pop-up from this panel. So I'm lining up that middle kind of score line with the transition between my colors. So I can get the orange part being the ground and the reddish part being the sky. So once I've cut that, I just need to fold at the score lines. So fold up for that first one at the top, fold back down for the one in the middle, and then up again for the one at the bottom. So you kind of get a bit of a hill shape, not a valley shape, a hill shape. Okay, so that's my front panel done. I've also used that other die to create just a piece of, cut a piece of white cardstock, which I'm gonna trim across at the top there. Now, Heffy Doodle haven't included that top part just because it saves room on the die packaging, and it's pretty easy just to slice it across with your paper trimmer. And this is going to be the mechanism that pulls the slider tab up and down. So I'm just going to use some double-sided tape here on the very bottom of that front panel that I've cut, just on that scored piece. So not right to the edges, just on that middle scored piece. And I'm going to attach my slider mechanism right on top of that, just line it up with the bottom and place it down fairly centrally if you can. And there we have it. That's my little slider mechanism all working. And obviously once you attach it down, it will take a little while, but if you keep moving it, it works really nicely. I did keep that cut out piece there. I just wanted to let you know that piece that was cut from the top where the tab part is. I have kept that so I can use it again. Now to finish up, I have ink blended another piece of Bristol smooth cardstock in exactly the same colours that I used for the bottom part of my front panel. And this is going to be the bit that you see when you pull your slider mechanism up. So I wanted to kind of work in seamlessly with the rest of the card, which is why I've used the same colours and done the same splatter detail. So again, I'm just going around with some double-sided tape, and I have cut this slightly shorter so that it's easier to grab the pull tab at the top. So it is slightly shorter, but it's long enough that it's gonna cover the kind of part that you're gonna see when you lift it up, but just short enough that you can grab hold of that pull tab without catching the back of this as well. And I just find that's a little bit easier to get that pull tab mechanism working. And there we have it. Again, it's a little bit stiff to begin with, but if you keep playing with it, it works really nicely. And you can see how the ink blended panel at the back works well with the ink at the front. I think it turned out slightly darker, but we'll live with it. It's okay. So now I'm going to figure out my stamping on the inside. This is where my sentiment is going to be. So I've pulled out this Lawn Fawn Rawrsome stamp set, and I'm using the sentiments from this. I wasn't keen on the sentiments in the Mama Elephant set, and I decided that this one would work better. I want to put this little dinosaur inside as well, so I'm just kind of making sure that I get enough room for my sentiment to be seen along and that little dinosaur to sit underneath it as well. So I'm going to pull out a stamping block here and some Versafine Onyx black ink, which I'm going to use to stamp down my sentiment. Being careful, obviously, after I've done all this ink blending, I don't want to smear anything or make a mess. So I'm just making sure that I press that down nicely and get a nice kind of crisp, clean impression there for my stamp. And then my little dinosaur is going to sit in there. So I'm just going to glue him down with some liquid glue and pop him in place. I'm making sure I kind of go right to the edges of this with the liquid glue because I want to make sure he doesn't catch on that slider mechanism. And thankfully he doesn't, he works fine, but just pays to make sure that he's well stuck down so that you can move that slider mechanism without kind of hitting him all the time. Next up, I'm going to start building the front of my card. So I've left it slid up so that I can kind of see where I need to attach things. What you don't want to do is glue everything flat down because then when you pull the pop up, it will it won't work. So you want to make sure that if you have it sticking up like I have now, it's much easier to see where you need to put the glue to attach your little images down. So I'm putting that volcano and two little palm trees when I get it stuck on at the very top there on either side, and I'm going to just use a little bit of glue to attach the palm trees together to give them a little bit more stability. Then I'm going to bring that largest dinosaur in, and he's going to go right in the center of those. So again, just using glue at the bottom of his feet there to make sure that he can stand upright when you pull the slider up and sit proud there. Now, my other little images, I'm going to, again, just use a little bit of glue behind those trees to stick them to the dinosaur. This just makes sure that they're nice and stable. I'm going to slide my mechanism down now to finish the rest of my images on the front. So I'm putting my little palm trees there onto the right-hand side, and then my other two little dinosaurs are going to be strolling along at the bottom there underneath that big Diplodocus, I think he is. So I'm just going to attach those down flat with some liquid glue. Again, just make sure that you're not sticking anything over those the cut lines in the die, because you don't want everything to be attached down to the sides. You want to be able to move your mechanism freely, so just be careful where you're placing your glue if you're using one of these dies, and just make sure that you don't get anything stuck down where it's not supposed to be. So once these guys are done, I felt like I was missing something. So I decided to colour in some little pterodactyls from the little Dino agenda as well, and pop them up there in the top part of my card. I just felt like it was lacking something in that top area. So here are my little pterodactyls. I'm going to pop them down like that and just glue them in place. And I kind of thought that filled in a little bit of space and made it look a little bit, I don't know, a little bit better, I thought. It might not add anything to it, I don't know, but they were fun to colour anyway. This colouring was really, really interesting because it was definitely colour combinations that I would not have put together, and they were a little bit tricky at times to blend, but they worked out in the end, and I think they looked really nice. So I've pulled out this Heffy Doodle Slimline pull tab with Slimline pull tab die, and it's got this tab in it, which I've used to cut that leftover piece that I had to create this arrow piece. And this is what is going to show my recipient what to do and how to move this mechanism. Okay, finally, and the little agenda set, the little Dino agenda, they have these tiny little words that say roar and grr, and I'm going to stamp those around my little dinosaurs just for a little bit of something extra as well. So I'm just kind of figuring out where I'm going to put them, and then I'm going to pull out my stamping block and that Versafine Onyx black ink again and stamp those down, which I have done. I also did a couple on the little dinosaur on the inside, and I just thought that added a little bit of something extra, and it's kind of cute. Okay, all that's left now is to pop all of this onto a card base. So I've used that same Lawn Fawn Rawrsome stamp set to stamp a sentiment on the inside which says "You're Dynamite," and I'm attaching my panel down with some foam tape. This just makes it a little bit easier to grab that pull tab at the top, and I'm going to pop that down right on top of my card base, and then that is it. My card is complete, and I really like how this one turned out today. It was a lot of fun to make. They take a little bit longer to make, these kind of mechanism type cards, but I think they're worth it. They give a little bit of a wow, don't they? I really hope you enjoyed this one today. If you did, please do give it a thumbs up. Please do subscribe to my channel. I would love to see you come back again, and please feel free to leave a comment. It's always lovely to hear from you. Thank you so much for joining me today. Take care.